This is the Morning Swim Show for Tuesday, September 14th, 2010. I'm Jeff Cummings, filling in for Peter Bush. This weekend marks the end of Jim Wood's 2 terms as president of USA Swimming, and recently at the American Swimming Coaches Association's World Clinic in Indianapolis, the outgoing president sat down with Brent Rudermiller to talk about the major issues he has encountered during his presidency.
You're watching Swimming World TV, and I'm your host today, Brent Rudermiller, and I'm here with Jim Wood, the current president of United States Swimming. Thanks for joining us, Jim.
Thank you, Brett.
Now, for all those who haven't seen Jim Wood on the national, international stage, you've been on the United States Swimming Board for 18 years. Is that correct?
That's correct. I was 12 years as chair of a OIOC committee, 2 years as technical vice president, and the last 4 years as president.
All the time, you were a coach of a major team too.
Full-time coach, team of about 300 athletes, about 6,000 kids in our swim school, so
yeah,
definitely a full-time job.
So that's Berkeley Aquatic Club up in New Jersey. And, you know, I think the first thing that someone would have to look at is how you were on both sides of swimming. You were in the trenches as a coach, and then you're on the dry side at the board. I mean, what a diverse view you had of swimming. And now, after being in a leadership position for 4 years, you know, and you're coming to the end of that, how can you reflect on all those years and the perspectives that might have changed, especially in the last 4 years?
Well, I think the volunteer part is something that I've always believed in. You know, my dad worked as volunteers and everything that was available for youth organizations. I require that all my staff volunteer either in New Jersey Swimming or on his own level or further than that. I really believe if you're going to make a career out of coaching, you need to have a say in the organization that governs your sport. So I got involved in, you know, volunteerism from way back when I was coaching on a collegiate level back in the 70s. I will say the last 4 years have been the most rewarding years involved in swimming that I've been involved in swimming. I think it was very special to me to be able to have input and to help craft some of the things that swimming went through the past 3 or 4 years, not just on the national level, but on the international level, and that was very, very rewarding and important to me.
You know, there are 2 major things that happened in the last 4 years that, as you say, rewarding, were probably one of the most challenging times for USA Swimming. One, the whole technical suit issue that came about and caused a lot of people to be concerned about the culture of our sport and the history of our sport being kind of lost and all of that. Are you pleased with the results of where it is right now with the suit situation?
Well, I'll be honest, I was very, very pleased with the results, with 95% of the results last year in Rome, with the overturning of the suits and bringing them back to more traditional suits, which allowed the best athlete to win races. I was not pleased that the guidance or the governance of that was put in the hands of the Bureau and not stayed in the hands of the Congress. And, you know, you hear all the whisperings about expanding the area that can be covered and going back to high-tech suits, and I think we have to be very, very diligent, you know, and watching to make sure that doesn't happen. You know, it's not the wishes of the countries, it's not the wishes of the athletes, and we need to make sure that doesn't happen.
So for those people who may just be tuning in on this issue, he's referring to FINA, which is the overarching governing body for all aquatics in the world, and there's a Congress which is all the federations who basically have a voice, and then there's a bureau about 22 people,
right,
who basically have, I guess, which in your opinion are making independent decisions of the Congress's will. Is that kind of where you're going with that?
I'm not saying that they are yet, but after the suit issue was passed last year in Rome at the Congress, there was a motion made that section of the rules be put into the bylaws, and that removes it from the ability of the Congress to change it and puts it in the hands of the Bureau. And it's been followed pretty well so far. There might have been a few issues up in Roberville at the Open Water Championships, but we need to be very diligent to make sure that the Bureau continues to follow the wishes of what the Congress was and keeps those suits out of swimming.
Speaking of FINA and the issue with the technical suits, there's also a lot of, I guess, introspection or evaluation of how FINA is handling new legislation that is being proposed by the Federation out there. And now, to my understanding, and I recently wrote a piece on this, was that there's an executive committee that is part of the Bureau itself, which are the 22 members, that are basically filtering legislation that can be proposed at the Congress, and there is some questions about whether or not there's enough transparency in that, there's enough democratic viewing of what that is, or even more input on that. I think this is a hot topic, and Jim, can you kind of elaborate what you're seeing in that area?
Well, I think obviously just the fact that you're asking the question is that there is not enough transparency in what's happening. Back in the springtime, or I guess late winter actually, FINA called an extraordinary Congress to discuss rules on the Constitution. This is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity.
And that Congress will take place?
Next summer at the World Championship.
So there's a lot of lead-up time for all that stuff to be presented.
Correct. This is different than most Congresses because they weren't going to accept any recommendations from national federations, but all recommendations for legislation had to come from Bureau members. It's okay, so we addressed it that way, and we formed a coalition between Asia, Europe, and the United States, and we sat down and put together the legislation that we would like to see proposed at the Congress next summer.
Which is the formality that they requested.
Which is exactly the formality.
All right.
We sent it in through 3 Bureau members. So all 3 Bureau members signed off on this and forwarded it under their names, which was basically what FINA was requiring to hear legislation. Now the process was supposed to be that all that legislation would then go to the legal committee just to look at it from a legality standpoint and then forward it to the Congress next summer. What has happened is the majority of our meaningful legislation never got there.
Never got where?
Never got to the legal commission to make a decision on. I don't know where it got waylaid. I don't know how they didn't get it, but they were basically given direction that there were parts of our legislation that they could look at and parts they should not look at, and our legislation did not go forward. The parts of our legislation that did go through it were basic housekeeping items in there that could have a meaningful impact on how FINA is governed in the future, never saw the light of day.
And specifically, 2 of those things were getting a coach on the Bureau and an athlete on the Bureau.
That is correct.
Which is kind of it's probably alarming to a lot of viewers out there. Why wouldn't a coach who's probably in the trenches every day have some kind of input on the governance of the sport? Why don't you think there's a reluctance to have a coach on there?
Well, that there is a real lack of respect for coaches. You know, I was told directly a number of years ago when I had a meeting with FINA executive director that coaches are just technicians and don't have a spot in the governance of the sport. That was a direct quote. What's come out of this, and we weren't even looking for a vote on the Bureau. What we're looking for the athletes and the coaches was representation and voice without vote, just so that it just makes sense to me, being in this country, that the ones that are most involved in the sport on a day-to-day basis are the athletes and coaches, and people ought to at least be interested in hearing their opinions and hearing their voice when they're discussing issues. I believe they're going to accept the athlete's position, but they're not going to let it be elected by athletes, which is really too bad.
Okay, now when you say they, who are they? Because if it didn't get out of legal. Go for it.
I'm not sure on this. I believe the athlete spot got out of legal.
Okay.
I believe the spot that got held up and never got presented was the coach's spot. So I believe the athlete, and without having the legislation in front of me, I got to say I'm not positive, but I believe the athlete spot did get through, and that will be discussed in the Congress, but the coach one did not.
So is it legal that held it up, or is it the people on the executive?
I do not think that legal has any objection to having coaches and athletes on the Bureau.
Okay. So a macro view here, can one assume that the executive is deciding what the rest of the members can see and not see and vote on, and they're basically controlling the agendas?
From a opinion from Jim Wood, that yes, the executive or certain members of the executive are making that decision. And that legislation that the whole Congress needs to be discussing is not being and having an opportunity to be discussed and voted on.
So the issue has grown beyond the need to get a coach on. Now the issue has grown to the powers that the executives have.
I think basically the issue, the bottom line issue, in FINA, is that the FINA executive, the FINA Bureau, the FINA leadership needs to understand that the shareholders of this sport are the athletes that all of our countries represent, and that they do not own the sport. And that when it comes to the point that important decisions need to be made, that the 200 countries that are present in the Congresses need to have the right to hear both sides and make those decisions. And that is currently not a very prevalent view by some of the leadership of FINA.
And how can that change?
I think we have a very good president right now. Okay, I think, not president of U.S. Swimming, president of FINA. Julio Maglione is a very good man, and I think he believes in the same things we believe in. We need to give him the backing and the encouragement, to stand up for this and to fight for this, because he is the individual that can do it. We're going to be meeting with him in Uruguay, and we're going to discuss these issues with him, and we hope that with the support from a number of countries that feel this way, he'll feel confident that he can stand up and push this issue.
So the other issue, which we're right smack in the middle of right now, is a controversy with how USA Swimming is handling the coaches and athlete relationships and sexual abuse allegations out there. And I know you cannot comment on that, and nor are we going to make this that venue to comment on that. But at the end of the day, there will be a retrospect of this, and just like there's a retrospect of how the technical suits was solved. What is your wish in the long run once all these issues are dealt with properly?
My wish in that particular issue, or in
just
I can answer that. We have always been concerned with athletes' protection, right? And we have always been what we consider to have a gold medal approach to it and doing the best that can be. I think back in September, before a lot of this even came out, I had appointed a committee to go ahead and review everything that we're doing and see areas that we need to make improvement, if we can make improvement. We do that every several years. We will continue to strengthen our standards that we have, and all of us understand that this is an issue that is worldwide in youth organizations, but we will remain diligent. We will continue to make changes to upgrade as we can go along. And my, ultimate goal is I'd love to have abuse end across the world with young people. But I think there's a long time coming before that's going to happen.
Yeah. Well, in any issue, whether it be the technical suit issue or the current challenges, it's a time commitment for you personally. And I understand you once told me that although the budget's there for USA Swimming to take you to places, is it true that you pay most of it out of your own pocket?
I handle all my expenses. Yeah. I've never asked USA Swimming for any money, even to go to board meetings or stuff like that. I just kind of pick that up.
Yeah.
It's just a way of giving back to them.
Yeah, that's very admirable, I guess it would be the right word there. But that's who Jim Wood is. And so, Jim, now after 18 years of that, you're still active coaching. Where do you see in the coaching line? I mean, is there another 10, 15 years? Are you just going to dissolve on deck?
Yeah, I coach because I love coaching. I still love coaching today as much as I loved coaching, 40 years ago when I got started. I have no timeline. When I get up in the morning and I don't want to get on the pool deck and work with kids, I'll stop. But it's not going to be this year or next year. I got quite a bit of time doing that. We're in the process of building a new pool, and that'll be exciting to be part of. And, I plan on staying involved in coaching, until I'm tired of doing it. But I'm not close to that. And I plan on staying involved in swimming as we go forward. Yeah.
Well, speaking of the pool, for those people who don't know, Jim bought the warm-up 50-meter pool. That was at the 2000?
Long Beach in
2004.
2004.
Okay. So it's only 6 years old then. Yeah,
that's true.
And what's the status of that?
We're making some progress. We have a real good relationship with the town right now that we have land under contract, and I firmly believe this is the 53rd piece of property that this one will be the one that works.
Well, good luck with that. And where do you see yourself volunteering and committing and being a part of the governance of various governing bodies and et cetera, et cetera?
Well, I am going to be involved in USAS, which is the governing, I don't know if we call it the governing body, but it's a group that oversees swimming, diving, synchro, and water polo. Back in the spring, USA Swimming recommended me, elected me to be our representative to the USAS board, so I'll still continue to do that. I'll be involved in USA Swimming where folks feel I can have the most impact. You know, I still want to give back. I do want to have opportunities to have input and have an effect on the future of our sport. And wherever people feel within the swimming community that I can have the most impact, I'll be involved in.
Well, thank you, Jim. Coach and Prez, we appreciate it.
It's been an awesome 4 years with you. Thank you.
Our thanks to Brent for that interview. On tomorrow's edition of the Morning Swim Show, I'll sit down with Olympian Elizabeth Beisel, who had a very busy month in August, both in and out of the pool. And that's our show for today. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time on swimmingworld.tv.